I never imagined I would be in this position, but here I am, sharing my story. I am a 35-year-old accountant and have been working at a local firm for nearly a decade. I have always been the practical type, pretty level-headed, and I guess that is what is helping me stay calm through everything that has happened. I was married to Jennifer, who is 32. We had been together for about 6 years, but only married for 3. No kids, which, in hindsight, is probably a blessing. Jennifer had not worked since we got married. She used to have a career in marketing, but once we tied the knot, she decided she wanted to take a break to focus on our relationship. I did not mind since I made enough to cover both of us, and I figured it was only a temporary situation. We had a house, a decent savings account, not extravagant by any means, but enough to live comfortably. For the most part, Jennifer was home a lot. However, over the past few months, things started to feel different. It is hard to pinpoint exactly when I noticed the shift, but Jennifer began to grow distant. She was staying out later, whether with friends or at the gym. She also stopped showing much affection and would get defensive whenever I asked if everything was okay. At first, I chalked it up to stress or maybe just a rough patch in our marriage. But as the weeks dragged on, I could not shake the gut feeling that something was wrong. And I was right. One evening, while Jennifer was in the shower, her phone buzzed. Out of pure habit, I glanced over at the screen. It was a message from someone named Chris. Initially, I did not think much of it. But then, I read the message, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, babe." The tone immediately raised red flags. Curious and concerned, I opened her phone, and what I found confirmed my worst fears. Jennifer had been seeing Chris, her gym trainer, for months. The texts were explicit, filled with intimate plans and promises that clearly did not include me. I sat there in shock, staring at her phone, unable to believe what I was reading. The woman I married, the person I trusted the most, had been cheating on me. Surprisingly, I did not feel immediate anger or sorrow. Instead, I felt nothing. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe it was my practical side kicking in, but I knew I had to confront her, and I had to keep my composure. When Jennifer came out of the bathroom, I calmly handed her the phone and asked her to explain. At first, she tried to brush it off, claiming it was nothing, just a joke. But when I started reading some of the messages aloud, she knew the jig was up. She could not deny it anymore. Without showing any sign of guilt or regret, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I want a divorce." No apologies, no excuses, just a cold, detached statement. She admitted she had been involved with Chris for a while and was no longer happy in our marriage. There was no effort to sugarcoat it. She was leaving me for him. But what really shocked me was what came next. Without skipping a beat, Jennifer immediately started talking about splitting our assets. She said she wanted half of everything. The house, the savings, all of it. She even had the nerve to say she deserved it because she had given up her career to support mine. I could hardly believe the nerve Jennifer had, but I stayed calm. Maybe it was because I had already emotionally checked out, or maybe it was because I knew something she did not. So, I agreed. I told her, if she wanted a divorce, I would not fight her on it. She could have half of what she believed was mine. Jennifer looked shocked, probably expecting a full-blown argument or emotional meltdown, but I was not about to give her that satisfaction. What Jennifer did not know, and what I did not feel the need to mention, was that almost everything we owned was technically under my dad's name. See, my father is a smart man. Years ago, when I started earning decent money, he suggested I put most of my assets in his name. He explained that it would protect me if anything ever went wrong, whether it was debts, lawsuits, or, as it turns out, a cheating wife. At the time, it just sounded like solid financial planning, so I went along with it. When Jennifer demanded half of everything, I knew she was not going to get what she was expecting. On paper, I did not own much, just a small checking account, my car, and a few personal items. The house? That belonged to my dad. The majority of our savings? Also under his control. Rather than dive into a drawn-out court battle, I suggested we go through mediation. I figured it would be quicker and less expensive for both of us. Jennifer agreed, probably thinking she was still in for a big payday. Little did she know, my dad's name had been tied to our assets for years. Honestly, I had forgotten about the whole arrangement until the divorce discussion started. It was never part of some grand plan to protect myself from a situation like this, but I could not deny how thankful I was for my dad's advice. The house we lived in was technically owned by him, along with most of the savings and investments Jennifer thought she would get. I had always kept a modest financial profile under my own name, living simply enough that no one, not even Jennifer, questioned it. When the divorce talks began, I filled my dad in on what was happening. Naturally, he was not thrilled. What Dad would be. But he understood the importance of keeping things quiet. We consulted a lawyer to double-check that everything was legally sound. It turns out everything was in perfect order. Jennifer could demand whatever she wanted, but there just wasn't much she could take. Jennifer wasted no time hiring a high-powered divorce lawyer, the type of person who promises to take everything they can. Meanwhile, I went with a more understated but experienced lawyer, someone who specialized in complicated financial cases like mine. I did not want to make this more of a mess than it already was, but I was not about to let Jennifer and her lawyer push me around. The first step was disclosing all our assets, and that is when things took a turn Jennifer had not seen coming. I provided everything as required by law, but when she saw how little was actually in my name, her lawyer's confident smile disappeared. They were both confused and suspicious, but there was nothing they could do about it. I had laid everything out honestly, and there were no hidden assets. Jennifer lost it. Right there in the meeting, she started accusing me of lying and hiding money. But I had given them everything. There was nothing else for her to take. After a lot of yelling and accusations, I calmly stood up and told her we could continue the conversation once she had calmed down. So, I'm turning to you because I'm not sure if I did all this correctly. Tell me, am I a bad guy for agreeing to give her half of what belongs to me, knowing that she won't get nearly what she thinks? Things have gotten even more tense since the initial asset disclosure. Jennifer was in complete disbelief. She clearly thought I was hiding something, and her accusations quickly turned into berating me, trying to make me feel guilty. Her lawyer was not much better. The expression on his face when they saw the modest numbers I presented on paper was absolutely priceless. It did not take long for them to demand a deeper investigation, convinced I had stashed money away in hidden accounts. Jennifer kept asking where all the money was, the house, the investments, the savings she had assumed we had. She just could not believe that, after years of marriage, there was not more to split. Her lawyer hired a forensic accountant, thinking they would uncover hidden assets, but I was not worried. Initially, I felt a little nervous, not because I had something to hide, but because I knew it would just drag out the entire process. But after discussing everything with my lawyer and going over the numbers, I was certain they would not find anything. Legally, everything was airtight. There was no paper trail leading to the assets under my dad's name. As the investigation dragged on, you could see the frustration building on Jennifer's face. She had always been used to getting what she wanted, but this time, there was nothing for her to take. It was like she just could not grasp the idea that she was walking away with next to nothing. Jennifer's next move was to argue that she had played a significant role in my career and our lifestyle. She claimed that by staying home and managing the household, she had allowed me to focus on work and advance in my career. Now, I will admit, having her take care of things at home was convenient at times, but it is not like I was running a Fortune 500 company. I am a mid-level accountant, and my job has been pretty steady for years. There was no huge increase in my income that she could point to and say, I helped him get there, but still, she tried. She pushed the idea that she had sacrificed her own career in marketing to support mine. But the truth is, she had not worked for very long before deciding she wanted to stay home. Even then, it was entirely her choice, not something I ever asked of her. Her lawyer brought this up again and again, trying to paint me as someone who had reaped the benefits of her sacrifice. But there just was not much to support that claim. At one point, they even tried to drag my parents into the divorce proceedings. Jennifer wanted to prove that they had been secretly giving me money or that I had been hiding assets with their help. This part made me especially angry. My parents had absolutely nothing to do with this, and it was a low blow to try and involve them. Fortunately, my lawyer was able to shut that down quickly, but it was clear Jennifer was getting desperate. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, Jennifer decided to take matters into her own hands. If she could not get what she wanted through the courts, she would try to ruin my reputation in other ways. She started telling our mutual friends that I had been hiding money from her, that I had been financially abusive throughout our marriage. The lies were unbelievable. I started hearing from friends how she had been going on and on about how I was leaving her with nothing, how I had manipulated her into believing we had more than we did. She even took to social media, posting vague but clearly pointed comments about narcissistic partners and betrayals. Some people, of course, took her side. There are always those who will back the person who looks like they are the victim. But most of our closer friends knew better. They knew I was not the kind of guy to do something like that. While it was infuriating to see her try to drag my name through the mud just because things were not going her way, I tried not to let it get to me. I knew the truth, and the people who mattered most to me knew it too. While Jennifer was busy with her smear campaign, I was making sure I had all my bases covered. My lawyer and I kept in close contact, making sure we had all the necessary evidence to prove my side of things. I documented every interaction with Jennifer, every demand she made, every time she tried to make me the villain. I knew if things ever went to court, this documentation would be key. On top of that, I started gathering evidence of her affair with Chris. While adultery does not always impact divorce settlements much, I wanted to make sure the truth about her actions came out. I had screenshots of their texts, photos of them together, and even statements from some of her friends who had known about the affair but stayed quiet. I did not want to humiliate Jennifer. I just wanted the truth to be clear. At the same time, I began preparing for what I knew would be a rough ending. I knew that once she realized she was not getting half of what she thought she would, things would get ugly. So, I kept my distance and focused on my work and my own life, making sure everything was in place for the next phase of this nightmare. One thing that made all of this even more bizarre was Chris's reaction to the whole situation. When Jennifer first told him she wanted to leave me for him, he seemed all for it. They had their little fantasy about starting a new life together. But once the divorce started getting messy, Chris started to pull back, and it became clear that he was not as invested in Jennifer as she had imagined. Word spread quickly that Chris had cold feet when he realized that being with her might mean getting entangled in her financial mess. Jennifer had built up this fantasy of a grand new life with Chris, but as it turned out, he was not ready to take on that commitment. In fact, the whole affair began to cost him clients at the gym. Apparently, people were not too keen on working with a personal trainer who was known for getting involved with married women. Chris began distancing himself from Jennifer, which left her slowly realizing that the dream she had envisioned was far from reality. She was starting to understand that this whole situation was not going to play out like the fairy tale she had once believed. Part of me almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered everything she had done, and that feeling quickly faded. As for me, I felt conflicted. On one hand, I felt a sense of satisfaction. I had protected myself, my assets, and Jennifer was not going to walk away with what she thought she deserved. But on the other hand, I could not shake a sense of sadness. This was my marriage, after all. I had loved Jennifer, and I truly believed we were building a life together. Seeing everything fall apart like this was tough, even if it was for the best. Then, things started taking a wild turn. Jennifer became more desperate, and her desperation was showing in the worst ways possible. Once she realized that she was not going to get the payout she expected from the divorce, she began targeting me personally. She threatened to ruin my career and destroy my reputation at work. She outright told me that unless I made things easier for her and gave her more money, she would make sure everyone at my firm knew what kind of person I really was. At first, I was not entirely sure what she meant, but it all became crystal clear when she started showing up at my office unannounced. The first time she came, she was calm, pretending like she just needed to talk. But when I told her there was nothing more to discuss, she snapped. She raised her voice, screaming things like, "I will make sure everyone here knows the truth about you." Fortunately, I was able to get her out of there before things escalated further, but it was obvious that she was becoming unpredictable. Her behavior at home, well, in her temporary home with her parents, was also becoming more erratic. Once it became clear that she would not walk away with a large settlement, she moved back in with her parents. From what I have heard, things have not been going well for her there. While her parents are supportive, they are not exactly thrilled with how things have played out. Even they seem to see through her attempts to paint herself as the victim. Mutual friends have told me that Jennifer has been lashing out, getting into heated arguments with her family, and acting like she is on the verge of a breakdown. On top of that, the legal side of things has become increasingly problematic. Jennifer's lawyers started throwing every possible tactic at us, desperate to dig up dirt on me. They filed motions to subpoena my parents' financial records, even though my lawyer had explained multiple times that my parents' assets were not part of the divorce. It was clearly a move designed to rattle me, but it was not working. Her legal team also tried to depose my colleagues at work, hoping to uncover anything that might suggest I was hiding money or receiving income under the table. They were grasping at straws, but it was still exhausting to deal with. Every time we thought we had handled one of their requests, they came back with another. It started to feel like a never-ending chess match. Every move I made, Jennifer and her lawyer tried to counter, but I had managed to stay one step ahead, thanks to my lawyer and the protections my father had put in place years ago. But even with all that, it was draining. I was not sure how much longer I could keep this up before we ended up in court for real. We had already attempted mediation twice, and both sessions had been a complete disaster. The first one ended after about 20 minutes, with Jennifer refusing to budge on her demands for half of the house and our savings. My lawyer explained to her that the house was under my father's name, and there simply was not the amount of money she thought there was. But Jennifer would not listen. She stormed out, accusing me of lying, and even going so far as to say the mediator was biased against her. The second mediation attempt? That was not much better. This time, Jennifer showed up to our next session with a list of demands that were completely out of touch with reality. She wanted full ownership of the house, half of our savings, even though they barely existed, and alimony for at least 5 years. When my lawyer calmly explained, yet again, that she was not entitled to any of those things, Jennifer lost it. She started shouting, going on about how she had sacrificed everything for me and how I was leaving her with nothing. I just sat there, doing my best to stay calm, but inside I was boiling. She was the one who had cheated. She was the one who wanted the divorce, and now she had the audacity to act like I was the one destroying her life? It was absolutely infuriating. After that session, it became painfully clear. This divorce was headed to court, whether I liked it or not. To make matters worse, Jennifer had started borrowing money from her family and friends to cover her growing legal fees. It was obvious she had not expected the divorce to drag on this long, and now she was scrambling to find ways to keep paying for her aggressive lawyer. Frankly, I had no idea how she planned to keep affording it, but that was not my concern. The more desperate she became, the more erratic her behavior got. From what mutual friends were telling me, Jennifer had been venting to anyone who would listen, spinning this wild narrative about how I had ruined her life. It got so bad that some of her friends had started pulling away from her. They were fed up with the constant drama and tired of her playing the victim at every turn. It was almost like everything Jennifer had counted on, everything she thought she would gain from this divorce, was slipping right through her fingers. Through all of this, I focused on staying calm and playing my cards carefully. Each time Jennifer made a new accusation or demand, I countered with facts and evidence. Any financial document her team requested, I provided, because I had nothing to hide. My lawyer was doing an excellent job of making sure we were following every legal procedure to the letter, which was more than I could say for Jennifer's team. And then there was the matter of my parents. Jennifer's attempts to drag them into this mess were absolutely infuriating. Thankfully, the legal protections in place made it impossible for her to access their financial records. But the fact that she was even trying spoke volumes about her desperation. She was convinced that if she kept digging, she would find some hidden stash of money I had been hiding from her. But, of course, there was nothing to find. The day of the court hearing finally came, and you could feel the tension in the room. It was overwhelming. Jennifer was the first to take the stand, and she came out swinging, full of fire and fury. She made it clear that she believed I had been hiding assets from her for years. She accused me of manipulating our finances, squirreling away money in secret accounts, and lying about how much we really had. Her performance was dramatic. She was even crying at one point, painting herself as the poor victim who had given up everything for me, only to be blindsided by the divorce and what she called my financial deceit. But then came the moment I had been waiting for. When my lawyer presented the evidence of her affair with Chris, the room shifted. Suddenly, the focus was not on her sob story anymore. The texts, the pictures, the details of her relationship with Chris, it all came out, and it was undeniable. The judge, the jury, everyone in the room could see the truth. Jennifer's carefully constructed image of being the wronged wife started to fall apart, piece by piece. She tried to downplay the affair, saying it was just a mistake and claiming it had nothing to do with the divorce. But it was too late. The damage was done. Her credibility was shattered, and it became clear that her demands for money were driven by pure greed, not by any real need. When it was my turn to testify, I made sure to keep my cool. My lawyer had coached me well. I stuck to the facts, presented my case clearly, and did not let my emotions get the better of me. I knew that losing my temper or becoming defensive would not help. It was all about the truth now, and that truth was all I needed. I laid everything out in court, detailing how my assets had been organized under my father's name for years, how I had provided full financial disclosures from the beginning, and how I had genuinely attempted to resolve things amicably through mediation. I also testified about Jennifer's increasingly erratic behavior, her threats, and the smear campaign she had been waging against me. My lawyer presented all the evidence, screenshots of the accusations she had made both in court and on social media, and it was clear how baseless they were. We revealed the truth about the finances. The house legally belonged to my father, our savings were modest, and there was no hidden fortune she could lay claim to. The judge seemed to appreciate my straightforwardness. I didn't paint Jennifer as a villain, but I didn't sugarcoat the facts either. It was clear and simple. I stuck to the truth without any dramatics. A few key witnesses were called during the trial, and their testimonies helped solidify my case. First, my father took the stand. He explained in detail the financial arrangement we had put in place years ago, how the house was under his name, how the investments were managed through his accounts, and how this was all done as a form of long-term financial protection. He made it clear that Jennifer had no legal claim to any of those assets. Then, one of my coworkers testified. Jennifer's team had tried to suggest that I was hiding money by accepting under-the-table payments, but my colleague shut that theory down fast. He explained that I had always received a modest, fully transparent salary, and there was nothing hidden. No secret bonuses, no mysterious sources of income. Just the paycheck I had disclosed from day one. These testimonies were crucial in proving that Jennifer's accusations had no merit. The judge saw right through her claims. There was no grand conspiracy, just a simple financial arrangement that Jennifer had either never cared to understand or had chosen to ignore. Finally, after days of exhausting testimony and legal back and forths, the judge delivered the verdict. It was a huge relief to hear the ruling in my favor. Jennifer's demands for half of the house and half of our savings were denied. The judge ruled that since the house and the bulk of our assets were legally owned by my father, Jennifer had no entitlement to them. The only thing she received was a minimal amount of alimony, and even that was only for a short duration, not enough to cover her legal fees, let alone the lifestyle she had envisioned. The judge didn't mince words in his decision. He made it clear that Jennifer's affair with Chris, along with her lack of financial contribution to the household, had played a major role in his ruling. Her attempt to portray herself as a victim had failed miserably. As the judge read out the decision, I felt an immense weight lift off my shoulders. All the stress, the constant accusations, the fear of losing everything, it all melted away. I knew that I was legally in the clear, and that Jennifer's greed and manipulation had finally been exposed for what they were. Jennifer, on the other hand, did not take the verdict well. The moment the judge finished, she burst into tears and started yelling about how the system was unfair, claiming that I had cheated her out of what was rightfully hers. She stormed out of the courtroom, leaving her lawyer looking exasperated. It was clear that she had never prepared herself for the possibility of losing. As for me, the first feeling I had was pure relief. I thanked my lawyer for all his hard work and headed out of the courthouse. My phone was already buzzing with messages from friends and family congratulating me on the outcome. News of the case had spread quickly, and people were talking about it all over town. It felt good to know that the truth had finally come out, and that I could now start the process of moving on with my life. But Jennifer wasn't done yet. Outside the courthouse, She had a full-blown meltdown in front of a small crowd. She screamed about how I had manipulated the system and vowed to appeal the decision. The problem was, she didn't have the money to follow through on that threat. During the trial, her lawyer had made it clear that Jennifer was running out of funds, and from what I had heard, she was still borrowing money from family and friends just to stay afloat. Looking back, I cannot help but be incredibly grateful for my father's advice and foresight. Without his guidance in setting up my financial protection years ago, I have no idea what kind of mess I would be in right now. I am also thankful for the unwavering support of my friends, family, and colleagues, especially during those tough months when Jennifer was spreading lies and trying to destroy my reputation. As I look toward the future, I am hopeful. I know it will take time to fully recover from this ordeal, both emotionally and financially, but I am ready to close this chapter and move on. I have learned valuable lessons from all of this, and I am certain I will not be making the same mistakes again. For now, I am just focusing on finding a sense of normalcy again and enjoying the peace that comes with having this nightmare finally behind me. What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.